Hello, wonderful. It is Sarah, and I'm here with Michelle Farris, who's a psychotherapist, anger management specialist, and good do-gooder of all good things online, right? Writing publications, ebooks, courses on codependency, right?
Mhm.
So Michelle, this is obviously an area of expertise for you, right?
Yeah, I love codependency because I too have been recovering from it for a long time. So I know it professionally and personally.
I have never heard anyone say I love codependency. I think that's the first.
Well, you know what? It's the reason we get into growth. I think people don't realize that our pain is what helps us create a better life.
Agreed. Agreed.
So,
And a better life and the pain of anger too. And that's what is so
yeah.
fascinated me about your work
Mm,
is that component of like anger, because so many times if people have been in codependent relationships, they
mhm.
don't give themselves permission to be angry, right?
Exactly. They stuff it and then it either comes out sideways in guilt trips or really indirect passive aggressive comments, or
Mhm.
they hold it so tight that eventually they explode because those feelings have to come up and out at some point.
Yeah.
Which, doesn't feel good to the person who's codependent.
Right. So, what advice do you have for someone like that? They've been kind of feeling like they're walking on a tight wire for a long
Mm.
time, keeping it in.
Yeah.
Where do they start?
So codependency recovery really starts with getting the focus off of other people because part of codependency is when we are so hyper focused on helping, giving, controlling other
I call it a
people.
healthaholic.
There you go.
Yep, a healthaholic.
That's
Yes. Yeah.
right. That we kind of totally forget about ourselves.
Yeah.
So, really, the first step in codependency recovery is to turn that focus on to you and to start figuring out what do you need? How do you feel? Because sometimes the codependent person doesn't even know that they're angry. They just feel a lot of stress or a lot of anxiety, but they can't really name it because they're not paying attention to situations where maybe their feelings are getting hurt because they're so focused on pleasing the other person and getting their approval.
Why does that happen? Why do we do that?
Well, I think it starts in childhood most of the time. And codependent people learn their value comes from other people.
Mhm.
So, as a kid, maybe they grew up with an alcoholic parent or a parent who was depressed or dysfunctional in some way, and they learn to help be the caretaker, negate themselves. And they realize that that's the way they can stay safe and some get some love or appreciation because they're maybe taking care of their siblings or they're taking care of mom. So they don't really learn to have a normal childhood that is actually needs to be self-focused and self-centered. And people don't realize that kids are naturally self-centered
Well, I
because
really want
you
to
know.
connect that idea of safety. Yeah, I want
Mhm.
to. I don't want to get too far away from that safety word,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh yeah, she. I know why she
I get that.
on that one, right? And yeah, we can definitely go back to the kid conversation, but I do want to go to that safety
Mhm.
word because what I
Yeah.
heard you say is me figuring out what I like and who I am is unsafe. It
Mhm.
feels unsafe to people,
Yeah.
and me making sure I'm okay, everyone else is having their needs met feels safe to me.
Yeah. Because that's what the family needs. So the codependent person learns not to ask for anything because if they do, maybe they're yelled at or they have some form of verbal abuse instead of, well, whoa, if I help out and I stay in the background, then I don't get into trouble or I don't get hit. So they learn that, ooh, you know what? Maybe that's how you do relationship. And then fast forward 20 years, their relationships are all about helping and being the contributor in a relationship versus having a natural healthy back and forth where you can have your needs and ask for what you need too.
And that's so tricky, especially for people who
Hmm.
are faith based or spiritual
Yeah.
based,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
it's like there's so much support of like you're a good person for being selfless. And
Right.
I have a quote, and it's a I've talked about that. The church says love everyone like you love yourself, but really sometimes the unspoken context is love everyone except for yourself.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is, with codependency recovery, it doesn't mean you can't give. It just means when it becomes codependent, you can tell because it starts to hurt you.
Mhm.
So if you can give and you say yes and you mean yes, and it doesn't hurt yourself or your own family or your own obligations, then far out.
Mhm.
But if you're saying yes because you feel like you have no choice and you have no personal time, if you're taking time away from your family, then it starts to hurt you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that's what most codependent people resist in recovery is they don't want to stop giving. And the truth is you don't have to. You just have to give more in moderation.
And give from a better place, right? Like
Yes,
as you're describing
absolutely.
this, and I know you've probably ran into this too, in like the healer mental health space,
Hmm.
there's a lot of codependent people who need you
Yeah.
to for them to be okay,
Yeah.
right? That whole helpaholic situation. It's like, oh, I need you to take care of. Oh, is there someone else broken? Is there someone else
Yeah.
broken?
Yeah.
And I know as I look for coaches and therapists and people to take me to the next level, that is not what
Right.
I want. Is someone who is using me to have their own needs met.
Right. Well, that's why codependent relationships tend to burn out because our whole happiness is based on that other person, and the other person starts to feel engulfed and trapped, and they can't take it. They can't take having that much pressure, so it eventually dies out.
Yeah. So how do people what like literally what are the first steps? So I feel
Mhm.
unsafe. I
Yeah.
can't connect with me. I don't know what I
Yeah.
like. I don't know what to do. What's your advice on that?
So the first step is really get some help
Mhm.
because the codependent can't, it's like me, I'm a therapist. I can't therapize myself. I have to have somebody else. So the codependent doesn't want to ask for help. So they want to do it all themselves. And that's going to be counterintuitive with the recovery process. So there's certainly a lot of things they can do self study that will help. I will say that. Like, I have a workbook on codependency. There's blogs. There's lots of things that they can do to get themselves started. And I definitely want to support that. But at some point, you have to have outside help.
Mhm.
Now, that outside help can be two things, three things: Al Anon or Coda, which are two 12-step programs that focus on codependency. They're free. You can get a sponsor, which is a mentor to walk you through the program. It's very cool. They're all on Zoom right now, so it's super easy. Some people don't like groups, and I will say that try it anyway, because most people that go to Al Anon don't go because they want to. They go because they're hurting and
Mhm.
they need that support because people, family and friends don't really understand codependency. The other thing you could do is form a group yourself. So if somebody's really, really private, they might have two or three codependent friends and they may say, hey, let's go have a group once a week and work through a codependent book. That might be a way to start because the codependent needs feedback. They like, I'm not going to see my blind spots, but somebody else could say, well, Michelle, it sounds like you're not really setting boundaries there. And I'll be like, oh, you're right.
But that's humility. I mean, there was a
It
situation
is.
in my life with a toxic person situation, right? And
Yeah.
my whole thing is obviously becoming toxic person proof. And for
Yeah.
me, being toxic person proof means knowing I cannot see some things in my own life. Like that's part of it. Like it's like,
Right.
okay, here's a strategy. It's a
Right.
toxic situation in my life. Okay, let me get some feedback. Was I over
Hmm.
the top, in the middle,
Yeah.
not enough, right? And
Yeah.
even in this situation, they're like, no, you should be more mad than you are. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, okay. But that's good. Obviously it's a little mini example in my own life because you
But
and I
that's
have done
perfect
years of
because
work.
that's the sign of health.
But it is right, thinking I have all the answers or I never need
Right.
any help. It's like, well, I'm a life coach, what do I need other people's, and it's like, whoa,
Exactly.
that's a dangerous human, the
Yeah.
person who thinks they've already got it all figured out or doesn't have any
Right.
blind spots, right?
Right. Now, the last one is you can have a coach or a therapist. And
Yeah.
those are the people that are ultra private, don't want to share at all yet. They just need that one-on-one support, which is totally fine.
Mhm.
But even, I tell all my clients, one-on-one support isn't necessarily enough to really do the lasting work of recovery because you're going to need more than an hour a week. And that's where Al-Anon is a nice conjoint to therapy, because it gives you that group support.
And online courses, right? I know I have
Uh-huh.
online courses.
Online
You have online
courses,
courses that are
workbooks, yeah.
strategic, right? So sometimes
Yes.
I think people get into this hopscotch healing,
Yeah.
which YouTube ends up being their guru. Maybe you'll like this. Maybe you'll like
Right.
this. And it's like, are you really trusting your recovery process to
Right.
YouTube creators, like algorithms,
Yeah.
and again, a good first start. And the people that you and I have seen truly make real changes have done what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
With those
Yeah.
three things. That's awesome. What are some exercises in those books? Like, how do you get past that sense of terror and start to
Yeah.
know like yourself again?
Well, part of it, I usually have people start with self-care. Like, are you taking good care of yourself? Physically is huge. Emotionally, spiritually, where are you right now? Because if you're on overwhelm, it's going to be really hard for you to function. So the first part is really about, how do you up your self-care? And some of this is just writing exercises where you start to think about, okay, what would make you feel calm? What are those things that you've always wanted to do for yourself, but you thought were selfish? And start practicing in baby step ways so that you can gain confidence. Because the biggest step in codependency recovery at first is really turning the focus to yourself, which is hard for the codependent because we are so helpful and we want so much to be outwardly focused to get that approval.
This is going to sound like a silly example, but in my own life, when I was learning to think about myself, right? I remember going out to eat with some friends, and the waitress set us at a table that was it was right under the air conditioner. And I was going to be freezing the whole time and just want to leave and not want to be with my friends. And I remember saying, may we please sit somewhere else? It's just like the littlest, this tiny thing. But my friends commented and they said, you've obviously made some real changes in your life that you asked for without guilt, without feeling I was bothering anyone. It was just like,
Yeah.
but that's a great like little example, right? Of something that was free. It didn't cost anything, right?
That's right.
But there was a level of bravery to it, though, because
for sure.
my friends were watching. What were they going to think I'm selfish? Are they going to think I'm something? And then I don't want to bother the wait staff, and it's like, well, they work here. It wasn't.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what they're supposed to do is hope that I have a comfortable dining experience. Yeah.
And that's also a sign of your relationships being healthy, because imagine if you did that and they said, we're not moving. That's ridiculous. Just sit there, tolerate it, tough it out. That's a different conversation. So, sometimes when we set a boundary like that, or we speak up and we get that other kind of reaction, that's really telling. And that's not bad or wrong. It just tells us, wow, we might not have supportive people in our life that really can tolerate the changes that we're making. Because you had a great example of, your friends totally supported that, which is what we want.
Yeah. And something in my own life, I've really paid attention to the difference, right? Like, who in my life do I feel safe around? Who in my life do I not feel like I have to please? Who in my life can I do that in front of and ask for help for myself in front of, and feeling what that feels like compared to what it feels like to be trying to please everyone, like really stepping into that feeling, right?
Right. Well, and that's how when in my workbook, I talk a lot about start with the people you feel safest with. Don't start with your mother-in-law or somebody that you're already in contention with. Start with the people that are most likely going to be like, oh, of course, I totally support you, because you want to gain that confidence, because, boundaries and self-care are foundational for feeling better and getting your time and energy back.
I love it. So let's bridge over to anger a bit, right?
Okay.
So within that, if it's not even safe to know what kind of food you like, it's certainly not safe to be angry. Right. So how do you start to embrace the anger without the anger controlling your life and getting out of control? Because that's probably what people are afraid of. Like, if I get angry, I'll self-sabotage or something. So
Right.
what advice do you have for them?
So the first step is to acknowledge that you actually feel it, because the codependent's not going to want to do that. They're going to want to be nice. They're going to want to avoid conflict. But if you leave, say, a situation and you feel funky, right? You feel like, ugh, something didn't go right.
Yeah.
And instead of ignoring it, thinking, oh, it's not that bad, I shouldn't be bothered, sit down and literally you could do some writing. You could just ask yourself, okay, why do you feel the way you do? And I will guarantee that if you let it bubble up, it will. And you'll realize, you know what they said hurt my feelings. Now, it doesn't mean you have to tell the other person yet. That's step 2. Step 1 is,
Right.
wow,
Great distinction. Yeah.
yeah, I'm really upset. Maybe I need to do some writing. Maybe I need to call a safe friend and talk it out. Because just acknowledging within yourself that you're upset is huge growth, huge growth.
Punching bag, exercise,
That's
take
right.
a walk,
That's right.
basically.
You know the drill.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like go back, like, okay,
Yeah.
what is it? And sometimes in our work, it's nice to have somebody to go back to the earliest stages with, because we kind of get
Yeah.
used to, like, in our phase of
Right.
life, we've done like years of work on yourself. It's like,
Yeah.
what was it back then?
Yeah.
That feels scary, So
But you don't have to do it all at once.
you
And that's
don't
why
have
I
to
don't
do it
want
all at once.
people
Yes.
to be scared about that, because they don't have to.
So feeling the anger first, then recognizing
Mhm.
that you have the choice of what to do with it. It doesn't have to
Right.
turn into
Right.
talking to someone or blowing up a bomb or,
Yeah.
a bomb. I was saying
Yeah.
bombing your
I know
life,
what you
not
mean.
like an actual bomb. But
Right.
it's definitely
Well, it's
not
an
actual
emotional
bomb.
bomb. It can be.
Yes, it's an emotional bomb. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So is there step 3?
Step 3 is, if you want to say something,
Mhm.
figure out what you want to say first and have it be super simple. When you said this, it hurt my feelings. When you did this, when you didn't respond to my text for 3 days, hurt my feelings. So super, super specific, not a big long thing. But, usually I recommend people writing it out first, because it's really hard in the moment to manage your emotion and know what to say in the moment, because you're probably afraid of what the other person's going to respond back with.
Mhm, mhm.
So if you can do a little prep work, it helps.
And the first thing that came up in my head is, oh, they're not gonna like me anymore,
Right,
right?
right,
I mean,
right.
it's just interesting. Like even now,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, they're not gonna like me anymore. So how do you get people past that?
So again, you start with the person who's super safe.
Yeah.
I would start with little tiny hurts, like not the big
Agree.
one that's going to scare you.
Agree.
But I will say that no matter what, it's going to be scary the first few times you do it.
Mhm.
But what's cool is that when I started doing this, most of the people in my life were like, oh, that wasn't my intention at all.
Right.
So when you start getting those kind of reactions back, it feeds you to go, oh, this is actually okay. Now, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist,
Right.
know
Don't start
that don't start with them, because they're
Yeah.
probably going to have a huge response to that. That might be when you call a friend, do some writing, get some exercise, do something else.
So they're gonna blame shift, right? You're too sensitive.
Yeah.
It shouldn't
Yeah.
have bothered you.
Yeah.
Right. And so look for people who aren't as likely to blame shift, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you start getting further on in your recovery, you're going to notice that maybe some of your relationships are going to be healthier than others. Some of them you may realize, wow, you know what? I've kind of outgrown them, because I'm setting boundaries now and I'm feeling better about myself, and they still want me to overgive and take care of them. And then, I think that's honestly the hardest part, because the codependent does not want to let go at any cost.
Mhm, mhm.
I know I didn't. It took me a lot to let go.
Yeah, and to me, I think I had to really get to a place like the language of "I don't deserve better" never really
Mhm.
resonated with me. I finally had to say,
Yeah.
yeah. It is not within my integrity to
Mm,
help other people become more selfish, because
mhm,
that's spreading darkness in the world. And
uh-huh.
I don't want to be someone who helps spread darkness like that. I
Mm,
had to come to this huge twist around, right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't just as easy as like, well, you deserve better. Yeah, I do deserve better. Okay, now what? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
which so much of the language out there is about that, right? Well, you deserve better.
Right. Right. Well, you can be anywhere on the spectrum, and it sounds like you had a stronger sense of self. So that wasn't as big of an issue for you, whereas someone else might come in with no self-esteem. So they're starting at square one, whereas you might not have started back that far, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and also aligning it with if your sense of health, if your sense of self, part of that
Mhm.
is in helping others,
Right.
right? I had to link it to that somehow,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it was actually able to help others be better, which is what I wanted. Oh, I want to make everybody's life better, right? So I had to link it somehow to that to make that connection, to build that bridge
Hmm.
where now it's like, that's not my responsibility. That's not my problem. That's not,
Yeah.
that is not okay. But at the
Yeah.
beginning, it was
Yeah.
like, where could I find that bridge? So
Yeah.
thank you. You gave me a lot of credit. And I will say, I don't even know. Maybe so. But I still had to kind of link it to helping others somehow. And
Uh,
I didn't want to be someone who helped others become worse people.
uh-huh. Yeah.
That
And
makes
yet there has to be a line of you being able to help others as long as it doesn't hurt you.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And not being that helpaholic. And also for anybody listening, I do really want to point out in the healing space,
Hmm.
kind of keeping a watch on that for who you choose to, like, therapists or healers or coaches or whatever.
Right.
Because it's something, I'm on the phone with people a lot and they're like, yeah, I'm a coach and this and that. And it's like, oh man, um, it's not from a healthy place, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's
Any other
good.
tips for dealing with anger?
You know, find the early warning signs.
Okay.
So usually there's physical signs like rapid heartbeat, muscle tension. Some people have really intense negative thoughts that they're not even aware of. Or emotionally, they might wake up on the wrong side of the bed and they don't name the feeling emotionally. So it grows into more and more anger. So if you can find your early warning signs, and I actually do a email course on anger that's free that talks about this because it's really important. If you know what your 2 or 3 main signs are, you're good to go because then you're going to go, oh, I'm going there. I need to take a break. But if
Mm-hmm.
you don't recognize it and you go, oh, it's not that bad yet, I'm just going to deal, right? Then it keeps growing within us and then we're going to end up exploding.
So that's what I help teach people in my own life, try to hold myself accountable to never getting to the end of my rope,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I need to recognize it on this end
Yeah.
rather than, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
That type of situation. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and most people know that there's 1 or 2 things that happen right away for them. Like I'll get up and pace. And I know if I'm up and I'm walking, I know I'm probably upset because I can't contain it sitting down. So I'm up and I'm moving. So that's like one of my early warning signs. Some other people might start swearing. They might reach for the cigarette to calm them down. So everybody has their own little dance of what their anger looks like. But if you think about it, there's probably some obvious telltale signs that you can work with to signal that, hey, I need to do something different.
And let's talk about the two avenues for doing something different, right? So I hear you
Hmm.
saying there's short-term strategies like take a break.
Yeah.
And then, of course, long-term strategies to actually do what we can to solve the problem
Yep. Yep.
rather than ignoring it, right?
Yeah.
Can you differentiate those?
Sure. So the taking a break is the first one because, especially if you've been physically or verbally abusive, you want to remove yourself because you don't have the control to stay and work it out.
Mhm.
So 20 minutes is usually what it takes for the body to de-escalate. It can't become 2 or 3 hours because then your partner is going to resent you because it becomes playtime.
What do you do in that 20 minutes?
So you calm down, you breathe, you do some writing, you take a walk, But you try to identify, okay, what's going on? Why am I upset? Because the other thing with anger is that people want to dismiss it and go, oh, I don't have a reason to be angry, but I guarantee you do. So you also, like if you're taking a walk, for instance, think about, okay, what just happened? And usually people will know, well, you know what, my partner said something that really hurt my feelings. Great. If that's the deal, then you know you got to go back and the solution is, hey, I just need to let you know when you said this, it really hurt my feelings. Can you help me understand what that's about? So that may be part of the solution. But initially, it's really how do you calm down enough so that you can take appropriate action at some point? And usually that's the first step that people need to work on for a while if anger is an issue.
Okay. And then in the working it out with a partner, that's more of the even long-term strategy, right? As you were talking about that, figuring out how to have better communication with your mother, sister, coworker, whatever, so that you aren't reaching the end of your rope, right? You're not hitting those extra points, right? And even something simple, I know this sounds silly, but delegating things you're not good at, in my own life, in my own business, it was like all this little detail work, like, oh, I need to change that person from, this, this coaching to this coaching. And it's like, I have to sign in and I have to this. And it's funny how those little things can build up. And there's some people who love, Shannon, my assistant, loves doing that stuff. If I was just like, hey, I need you to do public speaking all the time, she'd be like, what? Why would I, but we all have our own strength areas. And I think it's important to notice the little things that kind of build into, because I don't feel good at those little detail work. I feel insecure when I look at spreadsheets and did I check this box and did I make sure that was
well, you and I are a lot alike.
Oh, I know. I'm talking to you about it.
Yeah. I hate the detail stuff too.
It builds up, right? And it feels like so frustrating. And then you're just like, oh, this is just like a little box I'm supposed to fill in. This is not like a real problem. This is not that frustrating. But it can then, if you deal with that type of stuff, and then have a partner who's unsupportive or someone in your life who's really unsupportive and you're already on edge. Even that can be self-care, is finding someone
it's total. That's what I was going to say is you're practicing great self-care because you know where your strengths are and you're at a place in your business where you can say, you know what, I'm not going to do these other tasks because it takes too much out of you.
Well,
which is
and
great.
before I was at this place in my business, I could trade things off with friends. Right. And so that
Good
was
solution.
a really good technique, to like, hey, let me take, there's a girl that I worked with, and I would make her phone calls for her. Like, she hated talking on the phone, right? So it's like, hey, can you call the doctor's office and make an appointment? I was like, sure, no problem. And I cried one year, and she came over and put up my Christmas tree because my spatial reasoning is not so much, and I was crying because I was like, my Christmas tree's gonna look bad. But it was so simple, just a little like friendship things that you can build that trust and like, what are you good at?
Oh, that's lovely.
And I'm glad, I do have my nails done right now. I think I have makeup on, I'm not sure. But we kind of put self-care into this category of like long bath and candles and spa. Rather than how do I not reach the end of my rope and lose my shit on somebody and yell at my children or whatever.
Yeah, even saying to your kids, mommy's not having a good day. I mean, because that's such great role modeling for our kids to see us say, hey, you know what, we're not having a good day. We're just not going to do a lot today. Or mom's going to take a break. Because then our emotions match our words, and that's super, super healthy modeling for our kids.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I use the language with my kids like mommy's a person too. Right.
Well, and that's really great role modeling for them because they realize, oh, when mom has a bad day, she takes care of herself. And that's what we want our kids to learn to do. We don't want our kids to be a martyr and say, oh, you should never take care of yourself because that's selfish. But a lot of us grew up with that belief because it was much more common back then. Now it's shifting.
And now I think we also need to kind of And there's that balance and not like, what they call it, a lawnmower parent now, since we're talking about codependency,
Oh.
like the parent is like helicopter's not even the thing anymore. Like we're at this level of like lawnmower parents of like, colleges are talking about how frustrating it is when a kid in college gets a bad grade, the parents call the professor.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it's turned into this whole other conversation about codependency, right?
Yeah, that's a little overstepping, but that's what codependents do, is they don't realize that they're overstepping.
Yeah,
They
that's
have a
also
big heart.
yeah, and that's the message I hope people take away is kindness and goodness, and let's just keep it in the right lane. Michelle, where can people find more about you?
So my website is counselingrecovery.com,
Huh?
and I have a Facebook page on the same name, and I think my IG is the same. My Pinterest is the same. I love Pinterest. Pinterest is fun, and then YouTube, same thing.
Absolutely. So, if you had like a final message, like I wish everyone in the world knew what would it be?
That recovery is really the best thing you could ever do for yourself, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And you really deserve to have the support you need to get through it. Because codependency is like a tree with many branches. It goes in a lot of different areas. So you got to really be gentle with yourself, because the process is the process, but there are things you can do that are more structured to help you through the process. You don't have to struggle by yourself. I know that's a lot, but
yeah, that's great. So, that's perfect. Michelle, thank you so much for helping us on our journey to become toxic person proof.
I love that. Thank you.